Okay. Are you
I
ready?
am ready.
Okay. This interview will be recorded and used in an Arizona State University undergraduate course. Do you understand and grant permission that this interview be recorded?
I do.
Excellent. This is John Drum Pagano, Arch Druid of ADF. Can you pronounce that for me?
Arn Reactfane.
Thank you. A Druid Fellowship. He's also a dear friend of mine, and when I learned that we were required to complete an interview of a religious figure, I immediately thought of him because of his role in his global network of Druids. In fact, before I could officially ask, he volunteered for this activity, which makes it even more exciting for me. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for asking.
So, I guess we should get into Druidism.
Absolutely.
What are the origins of Druidism?
Well, that's a good question. I think that Druidism, or Druidry, we first see signs of it in the British Isles and in Western Europe, and we find out about it. There's no primary sources left because most of the traditions were done orally, but we find mentions of it in Caesar, in Conquest of Gaul, and in Pliny, Pliny the Elder. And Pliny the Younger, I think, as well. So they mentioned Druids, and so just a little bit of information that says, Druids got together on the sixth night of the moon. They wore white robes. They did this, they did that, and it's hard to tell whether it's accurate or not. Caesar was trying to. Caesar's writings were not just for history, but they were to try to get the Roman Senate to give more money so he could continue to conquer in Gaul. So that's the little that we know, is just that they were, groups of people who, had some kind of a function, some kind of a religious function. And I think a lot of what's happened since then has kind of been recreated.
Okay. Do we know, so we don't really know who the original Druids really were?
Really don't. We think that they showed up around about 1500 before the Common Era, so about 3,500 years ago. And they were located, as I said, in the British Isles and in Western Europe and Gaul, most likely Gaul, and parts of Spain, and parts of Gaul being parts of France. So I think it really was kind of a Celtic kind of thing. And as the Celts kind of moved out of Central Europe and started spreading west, the opinion is that Druidry somehow followed them or arose there.
Okay. Is there anything we should know about the original Druids, or is there just nothing we really can know about them?
There's nothing we really can know about them. There were some Druidic colleges that existed, and we know the locations of some of them, but what was taught there is, we've really lost it. We're told by some of those historians that they studied for 19 and a half years, that they were lawgivers, that they were instrumental in mediating conflicts, whether it was on the battlefield or judicially, but we really don't know much more about them.
Okay. How has Druidry changed over time?
Well, what happened is I think there's three categories of Druidry, and they are what we call three categories of paganism, and Druidry fits in there. There's paleo-paganism, which is the way the Druids practiced back then. We don't really know what they did, but that's what they did back then. And then there's meso-paganism or meso-Druidry that really started in about 1700. What happened is people in England, especially starting with a guy named Avebury, discovered, started coming across sites like Stonehenge and other places in that general region. There's Avebury Hill, which is named after him, actually. And what they said is, these things must have been built by the Druids, which they actually weren't. They were built before then. But they said, and so what they did is they built up this lore about what they thought Druids would have done.
Okay.
And so, for them, Druids were, guys with beards and white robes, and, they would hang out with these monuments, and they would celebrate the changing of the seasons, like the solstices and the equinoxes. And so that's what they believed, and it was called kind of the revival. It's what's called the Druid revival.
Okay.
And what's interesting to note is that, just from some historical notes, is that Druidry ended up, some branches of Druidry ended up becoming like fraternal organizations, like the British Druid Order, for example, or the American Order of Druidry. They became kind of like the Moose or the Elks. They were fraternal orders. And interestingly enough, in England, the person who founded the National Health Service, the NHS, was actually a Druid.
Oh, interesting.
Who worked with miners in Wales.
Okay, that's
So
very
that's kind of the
cool.
common function. And then what happened is in 1951, Britain repealed the Witchcraft Act, which meant that people could practice witchcraft again. And so there was a guy named Gerald Gardner who became the father of that movement. And one of his compatriots and contemporaries was a guy named, let me think about this now, Ross Nichols. And Ross Nichols was a Druid. So while they both looked at things in kind of a neo-pagan viewpoint, Ross Nichols went more towards the way of Druidry, and Gerald Gardner went more to the way of witchcraft. So we see the beginnings of Druidry there in what's called the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, which is an English organization. They're worldwide, the largest Druid organization in the world.
Okay.
And so Ross wrote a book called The Book of Druidry, and it describes his ideas about it. And then in the U.S. in 1963, there was a group called the Reformed Druids of North America that started at a college in Minnesota. And next weekend, I'm going to the 60th anniversary of that founding.
Oh, how cool!
So I went to the 50th. I'll be going to the 60th.
Oh, how wonderful!
Yeah, it's kind of neat. So kind of a long-winded, short history.
That's okay. We like history.
Okay.
What are the tenets of Druidry?
Well, that's interesting. For the Reformed Druids in North America, the tenets are kind of simple.
Okay.
It's, nature is good, and nature is very good.
Okay.
So it's real simple. For other organizations like mine, ADF, the tenets really are about, it's about building relationships. We're polytheists, so we don't believe in one God, we believe in many gods. And we believe that the work that we do, our devotional practices, are really to build relationships with those entities in our lives. The gods, the spirits of nature, our ancestors, the Earth Mother. Those are kind of the big ones for us. And so we just build relationships with them, and we do so at the high days, which are the seasonal changes, equinoxes and solstices, and then the cross-quarter days, which are the days directly in between them. So 1st of February, 1st of May, coming up Beltane in 2 days, and then Lunasa, 1st of August, and then Samhain, the 1st of November.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. Who is an average Druid?
Who is an average Druid? Honestly, it could be anybody.
Okay.
We've done some demographics. In paganism in general, there seems to be a lot of IT people.
Interesting.
There was a study done in the late 90s by the Wall Street Journal, wrote an article about it. They said that they mentioned at the time that there was a large percentage, not a majority percentage, but a large percentage of IT workers that were involved in neo-paganism or witchcraft or Druidry or whatever the case may be. So, but I think that what we find is there are people from all walks of life. And I think that what they find is they may have questioned their religious beliefs and, felt that there was a different way, maybe not the way of the Abrahamic faiths, which are like Islam and Judaism and Christianity, but something maybe older or different.
Okay, very cool. You answered that question very well. All right, let's see. What kind of imagery would one see at a Druid gathering?
Well, for ourselves, I think with any druid gathering, the fundamental, you're always going to find a fire. There's always going to be a fire burning.
Okay.
It's usually a ritual presence, and I think that it's a way to, it's just a nice thing to have. In Indo-European cultures and many cultures, at the center of religious practices, you would find a fire in temples and just in practices in general.
Does it have a meaning, the fire?
I mean, for us it does. I mean, for us, the fire is it's one of our, well, we have three realms that we talk about, which are land, sea, and sky. And we have hallows, or sacred objects that relate to those. And so for the sea, it's the well. And for the land, it's the tree. And for the sky, it's the fire. Because we feel that with the fire, if we make offerings or put things into the fire, not living things, I mean, not like we don't do animals, no blood sacrifices.
Correct.
But if we put things into the fire changes them, and then the smoke that rises, goes up to the sky. So it's a way of not only providing the center or the focus of the ritual space, but also a way of kind of energizing the offerings that we make.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned the rituals that you do celebrate earlier. Could you refresh me what those were, please?
Absolutely. There's we have 8 high days, and so I'll just kind of go through them very briefly.
Okay.
The first one is we'll just start with the calendar year. The first one is the 1st of February, and we use Gaelic names, so it's called Imbolc. And what Imbolc really means in the belly. And so it's really when it's the first stirrings of spring. In Western Europe, traditionally, it was the time when the ewes would begin to lactate, because their sheep, their baby sheep, were going to be born. So for us, it's kind of a reawakening. And it's usually dedicated to the goddess Bridget, or Brige. The next high day is the spring equinox, which is the balance between day and night. So we come from really the darkness of winter into a period where the days and the nights are equal. The next one, which is coming up in just a few days, is called Beltane. And Beltane is the beginning of what many call the light time of the year, or it's really the beginning of the growing season. A lot of this is very agricultural or agrarian based, and so it's a fire festival. The cross-quarter days like Imbolc and Beltane, Lunasa, Samhain are fire festivals. They were festivals that we believe that the Druids did observe. And then there's the summer solstice. Summer solstice is really the longest day of the year. The great irony of that is, while it's the longest day, the days start getting shorter right after that. But it's really the beginning of summer. Lunasa is kind of it's not the middle of summer, but it's like the height of summer. We call it the first. Some people call it the first harvest. It's the harvest of herbs. It's dedicated to there was an Irish god called Lu, who was a many-skilled god, and it was originally a funereal celebration for his mother, Telchu, who was an ancient goddess. And the story was that Telchu cultivated all of Ireland, and so when she finished, cultivating all of Ireland, then she died. And so kind of the end of one order and the beginning of another one. Then it's the vernal. It's also my mentor used to call it the Feast of the Least, because at that time the granaries were almost empty because people had been eating all the food. And so then you come to the autumnal equinox, which is really the second harvest, which is the harvest of grains, harvest of fruits and vegetables, when people would go and harvest. Once again, that day and the night being equal, so the long days of summer are gone, and now we're starting to move towards the darker time, when there's more night than there is day. And then we come to Samhain, and Samhain is traditionally seen as a time when the veil between the worlds is thinnest, when we can talk to when our ancestors are closest to us. And then after that, it's Yule or winter solstice, and the winter solstice is when it's the longest night of the year. And the beauty of the longest night of the year is that the days start getting longer right after that, although it doesn't
Absolutely.
seem like it. So that's kind of a trip through the wheel of the year.
Okay, beautiful. So you mentioned that Beltane is just around the corner, just a
Right.
couple days away.
Yes.
What does would that be a celebration, a ritual? How do you honor Beltane?
I think it's really both. A lot of times, I think traditionally, and the way we look at it, I mean, ADF is kind of an Indo-European tradition, so anything from Connacht in the west of Ireland to the Indus River Valley in India and all points in between, where places people spoke Indo-European languages. In Western Europe, the idea of a maypole was often used, and we see celebrations of the maypole throughout Western European history. Excuse me, and it's kind of I mean, if you take a look at the pole, it is, one could imagine that it could be a fertility symbol, and as people wrap the ribbons around, it's kind of just welcoming in that time of growing and kind of sealing the deal and kind of recognizing. So we would do a ritual. There may or may not be a maypole in it, but we would honor that high day.
Okay. There, the when you honor that high day, what are you honoring?
Well, what we do is, as I mentioned earlier, our rituals are really about building relationships. So we have 18 steps that we use, and we honor the Earth Mother, and we honor the spirits of inspiration, and by honoring them, we give them gifts.
Okay.
So it could be something as a poem, it could be grain, or it could be spirits, alcohol spirits, for example, into a fire. And so we make those offerings so that we feel that as we make offerings, we get to know them better, they get to know us better as well.
Okay.
And then we also honor the ancestors, nature spirits, and the shining ones, our gods and goddesses. We call those our kindreds. Those are the spirits that we feel are present in our world. And then we make one final offering, one final big offering. And then what we do is we take an omen using a tarot or runes or ogham, just to kind of see what information we can get back from, how was the work that we did received. And then we do what's called, we share the waters of life, where we take waters or spirits, alcohol spirits, and we ask the kindreds to descend into those waters and bless those waters, and then we share them with everybody else.
Okay.
So kind of a communion of sorts.
All right.
And then after that, we thank everybody who's been there, all the spirits that we worked with, and that's the end of the reign.
Okay. Very cool. Thank you. In what way does your religion inform your worldview?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that my religion is my worldview, because it's a nature. I mean, I would call it a nature-based religion, but I'd also call it a nature-centered religion or a nature-facing religion. We feel, many of us, I think, are pantheists that think everything is alive, everything is imbued with spirits. And so for us, celebrating those things is really coming home and finding our place in the natural world. I think that over time, some religious practices have put us outside of the natural world and said, and it's not a criticism, it's an observation, just to say, you are a steward of the natural world. But we feel differently than that. We feel that we have to care for the natural world because we're part of it. We're not separate from it. So for myself, we talk about the Earth Mother, and we always honor her first, and we feel that we come from the Earth Mother, we come from the earth, and that we flourish and thrive because of her, because of the gifts that she gives, and then in the end we return back to her. And for some of us, we think that that's a continuing cycle.
Okay. Very cool. Is there anything else you would like us to know about Druidry?
I think it's a very gentle path. There are a number of flavors of it. As I said, Obad, the orders of bards, obades, and druids. You can go to their website, druidry.org. I'm a member of that order. I think they're brilliant and they do wonderful work. They are not necessarily neo-pagan. Anybody can be part of that. Our organization, adf.org, You can check out our website and see what we're doing and see what. At least you can find out what people are thinking and what they're doing. And there's other ones, but I think those are the two biggies. There's also rdna.info,
Okay.
which has. This is a group, as I said, they started in 1963 and they wrote everything down. So there's thousands of pages of stuff on their website.
Oh, cool.
So, I think those are good places.
Okay, wonderful. I thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And I look forward to sharing this experience with my professor and classmates.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much. And of course, I'll send you a copy. When I get it all edited, because I have plans. So
That's awesome.
I thank you.
No, thank you.
Yay.
That was fun.
That was
I could have
fun.
babbled on for hours, but I tried to keep it succinct.
That's okay. We weren't given a time limit. They were just like, ask questions and see what you get.
I gave you the Cliff Notes version, but I think it was pretty good.
I think it was wonderful. Yes, some of what you told me, like I had read already,
Right.
and other things were new. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. No, thanks for asking. It was
No
fun.
problem. I appreciated it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yay.
And maybe somebody will, find it interesting.
Exactly.
I did a class